Hi, folks. Welcome to episode 120 of the Wealth on Any Income podcast. This is where we talk about money tips, techniques, attitudes, information, and provide inspiration around your business and your money. I'm your host, Rennie Gabriel. In past episodes, we spoke about how to understand the numbers from your business, how to measure the level of pleasure based on where you spend your money, how to track your money in 5 to 10 seconds, and what determines how close you are to complete financial choice, and how to run your business without being in your business. Last week, we had Divian Mistry from the United Kingdom, a successful designer who creates unique and effective websites. And today we have as our guest, Larry Broughton. Larry is an award-winning hotel owner and entrepreneur, CEO, best-selling author, keynote speaker, and former U.S. Army Green Beret. As founder and CEO of California-based Broughton Hotels, CBS News has called Larry the nation's foremost expert on leadership and entrepreneurship. He's the host of the Travel Channel's hit show, Hotel Impossible. That show says he's among the top hospitality experts in the country. His upbeat, creative approach to business and life has been featured in newspaper and magazine articles across the country, and he's been a recurring guest expert on news and TV programs on every major television and cable network, including MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, CBS, the Travel Channel. And among Larry's awards are Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year, the National Veteran-Owned Business Association's Ventrepreneur of the Year, and Passkey's Foundation's National Business Leader of Integrity. And fortunately, we didn't take up the whole time Larry's bio. Larry, welcome to the Wealth on Any Income podcast.
Wow, Rennie, it's so good to see you again. Before we go, though, I need to correct something that maybe you just misspoke there, or maybe you got bad data on there. So I was not the host of Hotel Impossible. That would be Anthony Melchiorri. I was on the show several times with him, helping turn around some of these hotels. But yeah, Anthony Melchiorri is a great guy in the hospitality industry. And so I just want to make sure that I'm not putting out bad information.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
that integrity thing.
Yeah, I realized I looked at that wrong, and it says the host of the Travel Channel says you're among the top hospitality experts.
Well, if Anthony says it, I'm going to believe it.
Yeah. and knowing the Sportsman's Lodge that you have, the place in Santa Monica where I've been, I know they're quality places.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome. So welcome to the podcast.
It's great to see you, like I said. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah. Well before the pandemic.
Well before that, yes.
But let's get to it with some questions.
Great.
Now, it's obvious you're in the hotel business.
Yes.
But why did you pick that?
Well, sometimes they say, you don't pick things, they pick you.
Right? Yep. That's like
after spending a bunch of years in the military, I thought I was going to get out of the military and maybe go work with the State Department. I knew I wanted to go to school. That was really the intention. I wanted to go to college and university at that point. I knew I wanted to study political science. Maybe I wanted to, run for political office one day. I wasn't really sure. I just knew I wanted to do something on the global stage, in that arena. But my first job after getting off of active duty was as a night auditor in a little no-tell motel in San Francisco in the Tenderloin District.
I know what those are. No-tell motel. Yes,
I don't know how you know that, Rennie, but I'm not even going to ask.
I'm well read. Okay.
Good. But it was in the Tenderloin area district in San Francisco. For those who don't know, that's kind of a pretty rough neighborhood. A lot of drug dealing, pimps, prostitution, homelessness. And so my job was really to keep the peace, among those folks.
And you're a tall guy, which would be imposing.
I was much larger back then. I'm about 6'5"-ish, I guess. But, I was much more muscular and a lot younger back then. And so I worked the night audit shift. I went in at 11 o'clock at night, worked until 7 in the morning, and tried to keep the peace among the, craziness that was going on there. Then I would go to school during the day. And after being there for a few months, an investment group came in, purchased the property with the intention of turning it around into what back then wasn't even known, but now they consider them boutique hotels.
Hmm.
And so that did indeed happen. And with this new ownership group, I became quick friends with the managing member of that, because we kind of had similar outlooks on life. Although he was a Stanford grad, his father was a Stanford grad, his mother was a Stanford grad, and I came from kind of a working poor family back in rural New York. And ultimately, we ended up becoming business partners and grew that hotel company to about 14 hotels in a 14-year period. I left the organization for about a year, right around when Desert Storm hit, and then came back. And but I fell in love with the hotel industry,
Hmm.
and I worked on several political campaigns during that process, and realized I just do not have thick enough skin to be in the political arena, because of all the nonsense that goes on there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's gotten worse in so many ways. But what I loved about the hotel industry, Rennie, was that it offered, you could put your toe into finance and real estate and marketing and team building and leadership and customer service, all kinds of things. And so for my kind of multifaceted levels of interest, it just kept me very intrigued. And so I ended up sticking around. And after being at that organization for about 14 years, I stepped down on my own after realizing the way I describe it is this. I was a primary leader stuck in a secondary leadership role. I was never going to be the CEO of that organization,
Yeah.
but I'm built more as an executive than an operations person. And so I knew that if I was going to be stepping into my fullest potential, I need to step away from the safety of that full-time paycheck and the distributions that came from being an owner in the organization and chart my own path. And so I did that.
And like you said, there are things that find you as opposed to you find them.
It's so right. I remember one of the first PR pieces that was written on me. I may butcher this, but the author or the journalist who wrote this said that Larry was in the right place and waited for the right time to come along. And sometimes we have to do that, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
patience, right?
Yeah.
So that's what happened.
And to back up the who finds who, as you know, I donate 100% of my profits to various charities from the work I do, training other people. Sure. And one of the primary recipients is Shelter to Soldier, that trains rescued animals to be service dogs for veterans who come back with PTSD and traumatic brain injury. So they don't commit suicide. But one of the things I remember the founder told me is the veteran doesn't pick the dog. The dog picks the veteran it's going to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really quite amazing. I've seen people's lives transformed when they get a service animal. Yeah. Most of them are, I use the word service animal, but service dogs, that's the primary thing. Yeah. Right. And boy, it's life-changing. It truly is life-changing for a lot of folks. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're doing that work.
Thank you. And I know that, a portion of people's, when they check in or when they check out, well, forget about how. Tell me what charity or causes are the most important to you right now, because I know they alternate.
They do alternate, but there's generally three that we stick to. One is called the Green Beret Foundation. For those who don't know, folks that are in the special operations community do most of the heavy lifting in the military. When I say heavy lifting, I mean most of the, door kicking in doors and, doing the really difficult work in this global war on terror. They've been really taking the brunt of it. And many of those folks leave families behind, and they need to be supported. And so Green Beret Foundation does a lot of good work there. Similarly, in the civilian community, there's an organization called IJM, International Justice Mission, that I've supported for years through doing fundraising and holding dinners and that kind of thing. And these are real life superheroes that are literally kicking in doors of the slave trade and human trafficking trade. In fact, if you were to go to their website right now, you won't find their office address, because they're breaking up billion-dollar sex trade and slave trade around the world. And so for their own safety, if you want to go meet with them in Washington, D.C., you're going to meet at a public place first. There'll be a bona fides, and they will prove that you are who you say you are before you go to the meeting. and that's that serious.
Yeah.
And they're doing amazing work there. And the other one that I do regularly is called Kiva, which
Oh,
they offer
we do that
micro
as
loans to
well. Yeah.
entrepreneurs around the world. It started out they were just doing stuff in third world and developing countries. And I'm a big believer. I've traveled to many places across the African continent, helping entrepreneurs start, run, streamline their businesses. And so Kiva does that. I spend most of my dollars there helping women,
Hmm.
women entrepreneurs. I can't think of one guy that we've helped, but I've helped hundreds of folks there. I've been with Kiva for a couple of decades anyway, and so I like the work that they do. Now they do offer microloans to U.S. based entrepreneurs now as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we've been doing it for many years, and I knew it focused on third world countries
Yeah.
and primarily women because they're the backbone of communities. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, of course. That's great.
Um,
I believe that entrepreneurship is the most powerful force in the world, besides spiritual force. But entrepreneurship has lifted more people out of poverty over the last couple of decades, few decades, than any social program, any government program has ever done, you know. And just the pride that comes with people pulling themselves up out of
mhm.
these poverty, levels. It's multi-generational.
Yeah,
When these women's children see them do this, they say, "Oh, it can be done." Right. And
exactly.
so, I
It's
could
the
talk for
old
hours about this, but this is powerful stuff.
exactly. It's the old, give a man a fish or teach him how to fish.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Great parable.
Well, let's get a little deeper. Tell me what
Okay.
your biggest failure or
Oh,
learning experience was, and what insight did you gain from that?
wow. Randy, you want to cut deep. All right. Well, probably still to this day, probably my biggest, let's say, public failure was my divorce.
Um,
That happened. Well, I think we separated about a dozen years ago, 11 years ago now, if I think about it. All right. So, Larry, why would you say public? Well, because I was kind of a public person back then. On the outside, it looked like we had it all going on. You
yeah,
know, no one knows what goes on behind closed doors
exactly.
in marriages, right? And so this is just kind of a cautionary tale to a lot of people. I learned this in the kind of recovery field or programs. Don't judge your insides by everyone else's outsides. Okay. It may look like that couple has got it all together, but you don't know what's going on inside them, just like they don't know what's going on inside you. You know, that person who's driving that Porsche that you wished that you had, you have no idea. They might be looking for the next concrete embankment that they can drive that thing into. We just don't know. Right. And
Yep.
so what did I learn from that? Well, so much. Back then, Randy, I was very, very focused on shielding the real Larry to the world.
Hmm.
My fear back then was if people really knew my flaws, they wouldn't love me, right? If they
Yep.
really knew the wounds that I was carrying around, and that included my bride, you know,
Mm.
if she really knew what was going on, there was no way that she could love me. And so, open communication, I learned there's real power in that. It takes courage, though. I mean, it takes real courage to speak the truth. It takes courage to tell the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Also, I learned you have to be committed to healing. You have to be committed to healing from the past, right? Back then, I used to focus purely on my business, and I thought that the world would reward me if they knew that I was busting my butt, growing my empire, making money. Then everything was going to be sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows, and that my bride would know that I was cared for her and I loved her and loved my kids. But her juices weren't being, or her whatever bucket, her
Needs
heart
weren't
wasn't being
being met.
filled.
Yeah.
Not even close. And so what I realized is that life begins beyond the bottom line. And so because of that, I kind of actually developed a tool for my clients and business, coaching clients and business, and myself, called the Whole Health Spider Graph. What I realized is that there's really kind of 8 major spans in our lives that includes physical, financial, professional, spiritual, friends, relationships, all those kind of things. But if I'm focusing on my business 100% of the time, guarantee those other areas of my life are being neglected.
Hmm.
And so the idea with this tool that we had developed is that we want to have whole health in all areas. All right. So that I'm not just excelling in one area, but hopefully in most areas of my life. And so I had to learn that, here's what I learned: the power in honest communication.
Yeah.
And that I'm worthless to my team and to my business, frankly, if my spiritual life, my relational health aren't all in good order. So it's a very, very painful time. But I'll tell you what, Rennie, thank goodness I was an entrepreneur when I was going through this. I was able to, for the first 6 months when I got separated, 40 hours a week I dedicated to getting healthy, getting whole. 40 hours a week. I had our chief operating officer step into our interim CEO role. And then for the 6 months after that, I spent 20 hours a week getting healthy. What do you mean by getting healthy? Accountability groups, journaling, writing, reading, meeting with therapists, whatever it meant to get healthy. That's what I focused on. And so one of my mantras is, I'm not who I used to be.
Yeah.
You don't transform yourself by focusing on the past and being stuck in the past.
No, you're absolutely right. All you need is an awareness of what happened to transform it. Without that awareness, there can't be any transformation.
That's right.
And, I talk about being a latchkey kid when I was growing up, which is why I took responsibility for myself. I wouldn't ask for help and all the rest of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But being aware of that is not the same as being committed to transforming it.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
It's a big step beyond the awareness and actually getting intentional about making the change.
Exactly. So, my life transformed in my 40s, and because I became willing to ask for help. And when I did that, my gosh, it just showed up enormously.
It's so interesting you should say that you have to be willing to ask for help. It takes guts to ask for help.
Yeah.
I know what goes on in our minds. Well, if I ask for help, then I'm going to look weak, or I'm going to be vulnerable. I want to do it on my own. Somehow we got it in our head that we believe in this lone wolf myth about success and life and the rugged individualist and all that kind of stuff. But what I realized, Rennie, is that when we ask for help, we're giving other people an opportunity to help and to serve us. And by not doing that, we're rejecting the joy that comes from helping other people.
Right.
Gift. When people say, hey, Rennie, do you need any help? And you say, no, I got it. It's like they're offering you a gift and you're saying, no, I don't want that gift.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's the foundation. The last time around when I created, the wealth that I have, I created the expression, wealth creation is a team sport, not a solo sport.
I like that.
And it applies to business. It applies to relationship. It applies to every area of life. It is a team sport. And the lone wolf syndrome doesn't help any of us.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Thank you for emphasizing that. I appreciate it.
Of course.
When it comes to the hotel business, though, let me ask this. What difficulties did you encounter during the pandemic, and how did you adapt?
Holy macaroni. Well, for those economists out there, people who watch the business cycles, you probably know that the hospitality industry, by all measures, was the worst hit industry during the pandemic.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it was crushed during it. But frankly, anyone who owns a business, not all businesses, but many businesses, realize that, at a flip of a switch, the government can shut you down. They may not be targeting you personally, but they have that power, right? And so, first of all, I used to think I was so smart because for all of our businesses, we used to carry, roughly 3 months, 4 months, maybe 5 months of free cash flow to help in case there is a downturn. Mm-hmm. But who the heck budgets for 1 year, 100% shutdown, zero cash flow coming in? Nobody budgets for that.
No.
You know that the average business in the U.S. has, I think it's 23 or 26 days of free cash flow. Mm-hmm. That's it. Right. So is it any wonder? And when you look at the hotel industry, and particularly the restaurant industry, which we own and operate restaurants as well, these are single-digit margined businesses. And so by a lot of estimations, over 20% of the restaurants in the country will never reopen.
Yep.
And some of the major markets, over 20% of the hotels will never reopen. So we were crushed, decimated, frankly, not to the extent that a lot of businesses were, where they actually closed their doors during the pandemic and handed hotels back to the banks and that kind of thing. Although we did on one in particular, but we do have some hotels that have closed their doors and not reopened. So what have we done? So we've had to reshift, pivot. We're moving into the asset management space rather than than just the ownership and offering third-party management stuff or services to clients. But the major thing, Rennie, is that the humility that comes from this is powerful and will serve us all into the future, I hope. So our major shift comes from being very intentional about recognizing our gratitude that we have, that we're even still alive, like living, breathing.
Yeah.
Because we all know, particularly the space that you're in, where you're serving people, a lot of folks took their life during this time. They took their own hand. A lot of suicide. We know that suicide rates have skyrocketed since the pandemic, right?
Yes.
And not just in the hotel industry. So what have we learned in our hospitality space now? Because I've got other businesses as well. But every morning we have what we call a morning stand-up. We've been doing this for years, right? So we get the key executives together, and very quickly we go through what have you accomplished yesterday? What do you hope to accomplish today? Now we've added an extra element onto that now since the pandemic, and that is we start out with saying, "What are we grateful for?" We start with that. What are you grateful for? And it's amazing. Like in the beginning, people would get very emotional. Well, first of all, it was very difficult for some people to say it, but then they started getting very emotional. I'm grateful for whatever it might be. And there's something about when you start recognizing the universe for the blessings that you have, and that even in our worst times, we probably don't have it as bad as some people in the world. And you always have something to be grateful for.
Absolutely.
Right? So that's the biggest lesson. I would just encourage people to consider this. Just consider for 30 days, starting your meetings, go around the room. I'm not talking about with client meetings. You can try it, I guess, but internal meetings. What are you grateful for today? And do that for 30 days and see what happens to your attitude. It's a challenge.
It's something my wife and I are very in tune with.
Yeah.
And when the pandemic hit, because we have apartment buildings and, people didn't have to pay rent, I looked at a couple of things. And one of them was, well, if none of our investments pan out, if none of the tenants pay rent, because of my insecurity, we had 2 years of free cash flow. And talking about insecure.
Yes. Yeah.
But you know what ended up happening?
What's that?
100% of our tenants paid 100% of their rent through the entire pandemic.
Wow. That's a rarity.
But that's because of how I interact with our tenants.
Yeah.
In the same way that you interact with your employees and your employees interact with your guests, whether it's the restaurants, the hotels, whatever business, because from the top, it filters down to the bottom.
Absolutely. And we forget that sometimes. We forget that. People are always watching.
Yeah.
Always. No matter what you do, people are watching you.
The good, the bad, doesn't make any difference.
Does not matter. Does not matter. Yeah, that's good. Congratulations on that. And you're setting a standard, I think, for people on how to live.
Yeah.
Somebody told me a long time, you never know the impact you have on people's lives.
That's true. Don't. Yeah. As an example, I just thought of this, but every single new tenant gets a copy of my book when they move in on how to handle money powerfully.
Oh, I love that. That's
and
great.
Many of the tenants have left us when they bought their own home.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
now, Larry, I'm sure my listeners will want to know more about staying in contact with you. Is there some free resource or something you can provide that will continue to keep people able to be in connection with you?
Well, let me do this. I mean, if people go to thelarrybroughton.com,
and I'll put that in the show notes.
There's a recording that I did several years ago. I meant to write a book on this and just didn't. So I took basically the synopsis of this book that I wanted to write. It's called Revealed: 8 Mission-Tested Strategies for Success in Life and Leadership. And when I put this recording, it's about an hour recording on these 8 different, I guess, strategies. I didn't realize the impact it was going to make in people's lives. We have received countless, and I'm not kidding, countless number of text, emails, people saying this changed my life. And in many cases, this saved my life. There was a nugget in here that resonated with me that was so powerful, I continue to fight on. So let me give that to folks, and they can get that by going to ugozi.com/revealed. Okay, Ugozi. Okay, that's one of my
business. Yeah, you got to have to spell
YOOGOZI.com/revealed. So it's YOOGOZI.com/revealed.
Great.
The recording, and there's an action guide in there. I mean, it's a great recording. So love for people to have that. Hopefully that touches their hearts and beings.
Thank you, Larry. And I will make sure that link is in the show notes.
Great.
All people will have to do is click on it. And I want to thank you for being on the Wealth on Any Income podcast.
Of course. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You got it, Larry. And to my listeners, thank you for tuning in. With this broadcast being so close to Christmas and New Year's, it'll be the last one for 2022. Our next broadcast will be on January 9th, 2023, and our guest will be Iman Agay, the founder of Success Road Academy, Canada's leader in online marketing and training. You can listen to the Wealth on Any Income podcast on your favorite platform, and please rate, review, and subscribe. And if you'd like to know how books, movies, and society programs you to be poor and what the cure is, then log on to wealthonanyincome.com/TEDx. You'll hear my TEDx talk and can request a free 27-page roadmap to complete financial choice and receive a weekly email with tips, techniques, or inspiration around your business or your money. And if you'd like to see how you can increase your wealth and donate to the causes that touch your heart, please check out our affordable program, Wealth with Purpose. Until next week, be prosperous. Bye-bye for now.